Daddy, the video stopped again, Poppy whined, tugging on the sleeve of Luca O'Brien's worn jacket as they sat on the city bus, the screen of his cracked phone frozen mid-cartoon. Luca sighed and rubbed his forehead, his other hand gripping the stroller handle beside him. I know, baby, this thing's on its last breath. The phone screen went black, dead. Poppy pouted, her tiny face crumpling. You promised could watch the end. I know, he muttered, looking around the packed bus for some sort of miracle. He spotted a woman a few feet away, standing near the door, holding a sleek silver phone in one hand and a coffee in the other. Her coat looked expensive, not flashy, just the kind that didn't come from a clearance rack. But she had kind eyes. Desperate, Luca stood and approached her. Excuse me, I'm sorry to bother you, but could I borrow your phone for a minute? My daughter was watching something on mine and it died, just until our stop. The woman blinked, startled, then looked past him at the little girl hugging a stuffed unicorn. Of course, she said quickly, handing him the phone without hesitation. Here. He let out a breath of relief. Thank you, really, just a few minutes. Luca crouched beside Poppy, loading the video and watching her face light up again. The woman stayed near, sipping her coffee and glancing down at them with quiet curiosity. I'm Luca, he said, handing the phone back once the video ended. She smiled, Dahlia. Poppy, say thank you to Dahlia. Thank you, Poppy beamed, waving her unicorn's paw. Dahlia laughed softly. She's adorable. The bus halted. Luca stood and grabbed the stroller. This is us. He hesitated, then added, thanks again, that meant a lot. Dahlia nodded, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. Anytime. They were gone before she could ask anything more. Dahlia Ainsley didn't know why she couldn't stop thinking about the man with the tired eyes and the little girl with star-shaped barrettes. Her driver picked her up from the next stop, her usual route to the office tower, where she ran the marketing empire her parents left behind. But somewhere between the morning meetings and the overpriced espresso, her mind wandered back to them. She hadn't told him she was a millionaire. Why would she? He looked like he barely had time to sleep, let alone care about what kind of life she lived. Still, 3 days later, she saw them again. Dahlia was walking through the park near the Children's Museum when she heard a familiar giggle. Poppy was on the swings, squealing as her father pushed her gently. Luca looked exhausted again, rubbing the back of his neck and glancing at his phone like he was waiting on a call that wouldn't come. Hey, she said, stepping closer. Luca turned, surprised. Oh, hi. Didn't think I'd see you again. Yeah, same, he smiled tiredly. Poppy, look who it is. Poppy grinned, phone lady. Dahlia laughed, that's me. Luca looked embarrassed. Sorry, she remembers everything, sometimes too much. I take it as a compliment. She paused. Do you guys come here a lot? Only when I can afford the day pass for the museum. Today we're just doing the free stuff. Swings, ducks, and peanut butter sandwiches. She nodded, watching his face. If you ever need a break. I mean, I don't normally say things like this, but I run a creative agency downtown. We're hiring part-time production assistants. It's not glamorous, but it pays well and comes with benefits. He blinked. You just offer me a job. No, I'm offering you a shot at one. You'd have to apply and interview like everyone else. Luca studied her cautious. Why? She shrugged. Because you're trying, and I respect that. He didn't answer for a long moment. Then he said, okay, I'll apply. 2 weeks later, Luca walked into Ainsley Creative wearing the only button-down shirt he owned and clutching a folder with his resume. He knew it wasn't impressive years in construction, a gap after Poppy's mom left, and a few part-time gigs. But he'd show up. He always did. Dahlia didn't do the interview herself, but she watched through the glass as her team spoke with him. He was nervous but honest. They liked that. He got the job. By the time snow started falling in late November, Luca had learned how to operate a camera rig and set up photo shoots. He didn't talk much about his personal life, but every day at 5, he left exactly on time to pick up Poppy from her sitter. Dahlia found herself waiting for those final minutes of the day, just for a chance to say goodbye. "Big shoot this weekend," she mentioned one evening, walking beside him toward the elevator. "Yeah, I saw the call sheet." He glanced at her. "You'll be there." "I usually am." He nodded. "Cools." The elevator dinged. He hesitated. "Hey, thanks again for giving me a shot." She smiled. "You earned it." As the doors closed between them, she realized something unshakable. She liked him. Not because he was handsome, though he was, or because he was kind to his daughter, but because he saw her like no one else did, not as the rich girl with the corner office. Just Dahlia. And she was falling. Hard. The rooftop of the downtown studio was colder than expected. Dahlia tightened the belt of her wool coat and crossed her arms as the wind tugged at strands of her hair. The city stretched out in every direction, glass towers, blinking lights, the hum of something always moving. She wasn't sure why she'd come up here after the shoot wrapped, just that she needed air and space. And maybe, if she was honest with herself, to stop thinking about Luca O'Brien for 5 minutes. "Didn't think anyone else knew about this spot," came his voice behind her. She turned. He was holding 2 steaming paper cups, his breath fogging in the cold. He offered one to her. "I didn't know you drank coffee," she said, accepting it. "I don't," he replied. "Hot chocolate, extra cinnamon, figured you'd like that." Her eyebrows lifted. "You guessed." "No, overheard you turning it down last week because it didn't have cinnamon." She laughed softly, more surprised than anything. "You're observant." "Kind of have to be when you're trying to read rooms you don't belong in." His honesty hit her in a way most people's compliments never did. Real, raw, no performance. "You belong," she said quietly. He leaned against the railing beside her, staring out at the skyline. "Sometimes forget what it feels like to talk to someone without pretending." "You pretend with everyone else." "Most people want a version of you that makes them comfortable. I just give them that." Dahlia watched him for a moment. The lines around his eyes weren't just from exhaustion, they were lived in, earned. "You don't have to give me anything." He glanced at her. "That's the problem. With you, I don't know how to fake it." The wind whipped between them, sharp and electric. She turned to face him. "Then don't." Neither of them moved. The silence wasn't awkward, it was full of something else. Something slow, building, and dangerous. "I should get home," he said finally, pushing off the railing. "Poppy." He nodded. "She's with her sitter for another hour, but I promised I'd read her this library book before bedtime. It's about a dragon who eats the moon." "That sounds oddly poetic." He smiled faintly. "She makes me see things that way." Dahlia hesitated. "Would you ever let me meet her? Not as your boss, just as someone who really likes dragons and bedtime stories." Luca's body stilled, and for a second, something unreadable passed through his eyes. "I don't introduce her to people," he said, voice low. "Not unless I know they're staying." Dahlia's throat tightened. "Fair." He stepped back. "But if you're serious about dragons, maybe next week." She nodded, unable to stop the warmth that spread in her chest. He left without another word. By the time Monday rolled around again, the office was buzzing about the upcoming gala Ainsley Creative Co. hosted every December. Dahlia never missed it. It was more than just a social affair, it was the one event that reminded her why she did all of this. Her parents had built it from nothing. The gala was their legacy. And this year, it was hers alone. Are you bringing anyone? Her assistant asked as she reviewed the final guest list. Dahlia didn't answer immediately. Is Luca on the staff RSVP list? He RSVP'd no. She frowned. Did he say why? Said he couldn't afford the tux rental. That night, she walked into the equipment room while he was coiling cords. You're not coming Saturday. He didn't look up, didn't think it was my kind of scene. I disagree. I don't have a suit, Dahlia. Then I'll send one. I'm not a charity case. She stepped closer, voice firm but soft. I'm not offering charity. I'm offering you a place at my table because you belong there. He finally looked at her. You realize everyone will talk. Let them. Their eyes locked. The world still spun around them, but in that moment, neither moved. Saturday arrived with a snowstorm that dusted the city in white, and the ballroom of the Sterling Hotel glowed like something out of a dream. Gold light, crystal chandeliers, music that felt like a heartbeat under the skin. Dahlia stood near the entrance in a deep navy gown, her hair swept up, diamond earrings catching the light. She hadn't worn them since her mother's funeral. Tonight, it felt right. She was half listening to a board member when the room shifted. Heads turned, whispers stirred. Luca entered in a tailored black suit, the cut sharp and clean, his dark hair brushed back. But it wasn't the clothes that made everyone pause, it was the way he walked. Slow, measured, unapologetic. He saw her, and for the first time, he didn't look away. You clean up well, she said as he reached her. It's the suit, he replied, eyes never leaving hers. No, she said, it's you. They danced once. He was hesitant at first, but she led, laughing when he stumbled. You're not exactly light on your feet, she teased. I'm used to construction boots, he retorted, but his hand tightened at her waist. The music shifted, slowed. His hand slid into hers. Why me? He asked, voice low. Because you see me, not the company, not the name, just me. He exhaled, his thumb brushing lightly along her fingers. And what if I see too much? Then you'll see I've already fallen. The music faded, the lights dimmed, but neither moved. Because everything had changed, and they both knew it. The snow had turned to slush by Monday morning, soaking through the hems of Luca's jeans as he stepped off the curb with Poppy's mittened hand in his. She skipped beside him, her unicorn backpack bouncing with every step, the pink ears peeking out from under her hood. Daddy, you forgot my applesauce. He stopped short, checking the side pouch of her lunchbox. Empty. I'll grab one on the way. We'll be early. They ducked into the corner bodega, the bell above the door jingling faintly. Poppy wandered toward the candy rack while Luca scanned the shelves. He spotted the familiar green lid and reached for it just as someone appeared behind the counter. You were at that gala Saturday, the cashier said, narrowing his eyes. Saw your picture in the paper with that woman from the creative agency. Luca froze, didn't know anyone was taking pictures. Well, they were. You looked like you belonged. The man gave him a half-curious glance. So what are you doing shopping here again? Luca didn't bother answering. He handed over the exact change, took Poppy's hand, and walked out without another word. The moment stayed with him. By the time he dropped Poppy at her sitter's apartment and reached the studio, Dahlia was already in the editing room, leaning over a monitor with one of the graphic designers. The door was half open. He didn't knock. You made the paper, she said without turning around. I heard. She straightened and faced him. You're not going to disappear because of it, are you? I've got no reason to disappear. But... He stepped farther into the room. I'm not used to people watching me, not like that. Dahlia studied him. Do you regret coming? No, he hesitated. I just didn't realize what it would feel like being seen through someone else's lens. You mean mind? No, theirs, he nodded toward the window. Strangers. She nodded slowly. You're not a story, Luca, not to me. He leaned against the table, arms crossed. I've spent a long time making sure I wasn't one. Why? Because stories get twisted. People love a headline, especially when someone like me ends up somewhere unexpected. Dahlia's voice was quiet. You're not unexpected. You're exactly where you're supposed to be. The tension between them was different now, heavier. But she didn't move, and neither did he. Later that afternoon, she found him alone in the equipment bay, adjusting a lighting rig. The overhead fluorescents buzzed faintly. You have plans tonight. He looked up. No. I'm cooking. You cook. Only when I want to impress someone. He set the wrench down slowly. You trying to impress me? Yes. He blinked once. Then I guess I'm coming over. She gave him her address out loud. No hesitation. And by 7, he was standing outside a red brick townhouse tucked between 2 tall hedges and a wrought iron gate. It was nothing like he imagined, not modern or cold, but warm, with flickering lights in the windows and the faint smell of rosemary drifting into the street. She answered the door barefoot, wearing jeans and a black sweater flecked with flour. You weren't lying, he said, stepping inside. I never lie about food. The dining room was already set. Real plates, linen napkins, a bottle of wine breathing beside a flickering candle. He glanced at it. I don't usually do this. Eat. Be in people's houses. Neither do I, she said, gesturing for him to sit. The meal was simple roast chicken, potatoes, something with thyme, and he didn't say much while they ate. But she watched him carefully. Is it weird for you? She asked finally. What? This, me, us. He set his fork down. It's not weird, it's unexpected. Because of the difference. Luca looked up, eyes steady. No, because I thought I was done with this part of life. Dahlia tilted her head. What part? Falling for someone, can't stop thinking about. She didn't answer, just stood and walked toward the record player in the corner, lifting the arm and dropping it on a soft jazz album. The room filled with a slow, smoky rhythm. Dance with me. He shook his head. I don't dance. You already did, at the galas. That was different. How? No one was watching here. She stepped close. Exactly. He let her take his hand. They moved quietly, the music curling around them. Her fingers rested on his chest, and he could feel the heat of her palm through his shirt. You always lead, he asked. Only when I want to make sure, don't fall. He looked down at her, but you already did. She didn't deny it. He kissed her then slow, certain, no hesitation, no question. When they pulled apart, her voice was breathless. What happens now? I don't know, he said, but I want to find out. Later, when he left, she stood at the door and watched him disappear down the street, the snow beginning again soft and soundless. She didn't know where this was going. But she knew she wanted to follow him wherever it led. Poppy tugged on Luca's sleeve as they sat on the floor of the children's library, picture books scattered around them like spilled watercolor. She was halfway through a story about a hedgehog with a telescope, but her focus had shifted. Are we going to see Dahlia later? Luca looked up from the page. Not today, sweetheart. Why not? He hesitated, not because he didn't have an answer, but because the one he had felt too big for a 4-year-old. Because sometimes grown-ups need to figure things out first. She pouted, but only for a second. Okay, can we get ice cream then? He smiled, brushing a curl off her forehead. Yes, we can do that. Outside, the cold had softened, the wind gentler now, like spring was starting to remember itself. Luca didn't know what to do with the ache in his chest. It wasn't sadness. Not exactly. It was the weight of knowing something rare had landed in his hands, and he didn't know if he had the courage to keep it. He hadn't seen Dahlia in 3 days. Not since the night he kissed her in her kitchen. Not since he walked away from the one space that had ever made him feel like more than just a man trying to hold his world together. He hadn't called, and she hadn't come looking. Not until the following Friday, when he stepped into the staff lounge to grab a wrench from the drawer beneath the sink and found her already there, pouring hot water into a mug. She didn't look surprised to see him. "I thought you had the afternoon off," she said, not turning around. "I came in to fix one of the light tracks. It was sparking again." She stirred something into her tea. "You didn't have to do that." "I know." Silence stretched between them, thick and uneven. "I wasn't sure if you were avoiding me or just deciding if it was worth it," she said finally. Luca leaned against the counter, arms folded. "I wasn't avoiding you." "Then what were you doing?" "Trying to figure out how you fit into my life without breaking it." She turned now, her face unreadable. "And I don't know yet." Her voice softened. "Luca, I didn't fall for some idea of you. I fell for the man who shows up when it's hard, who holds everything together with one hand while the other is carrying a unicorn backpack." He exhaled. "It's not just about me. I've got a daughter, a life I've been building from the ground up. I don't get to gamble with that." "I'm not asking you to gamble. I'm offering to build it with you." He said nothing, just stared at the floor like the words were too heavy to lift. She stepped closer. "Do you remember what you said to me the day we met? That you just needed a few minutes, just enough time for her to finish her video?" He nodded slowly. "Well, I think we're worth more than a few minutes. I think we're worth the whole damn story." He looked up then, eyes meeting hers. "You're not afraid of what comes with me." "I'm afraid of what happens if I let you walk away." The wrench clattered to the counter as he stepped forward, closing the space between them in 2 deliberate strides. His hands cupped her face, gentle but certain. When he kissed her this time, it wasn't tentative. It was a promise. "I want you in her life," he said when they broke apart. "But not just as someone passing through. I want her to know what it looks like when love shows up and stays." Dahlia's eyes shone. "So do I." 3 weeks later, Poppy sat on Luca's shoulders as the 3 of them strolled through the Sunday market. She had a flower crown on her head and a sticky half-eaten popsicle in her hand. Dahlia pointed to a stall selling handmade dolls. "That one looks like the moon dragon." Poppy leaned forward. "It does." Luca handed over a crumpled bill, and the vendor wrapped the doll in tissue paper. "I think she's going to sleep with it for the next 10 years, he said as they continued down the row of booths. "Good," Dahlia said. "She'll remember this day." Luca looked at her, sunlight catching the edge of her smile. "So will I." They paused near a fountain, watching as children tossed pennies into the water. Dahlia turned to him. "You know, I've been thinking." "Dangerous." She nudged his shoulder. "I want to start something. Not just us, I mean something real, a foundation for single parents, for working families. We could create something that gives people like you what you didn't have. A shot, a future." He blinked. "You do that." "I am doing it, and I want you to help me run it." He laughed, not because it was funny, but because he didn't know how else to respond to the way the world kept unfolding in front of him. "You're serious." "Dead serious. You've lived it. You know what's needed." He stared at her, stunned. "You're going to change lives." She shook her head. "We are." 6 months later, the O'Brien Ainsley Foundation opened its doors in a restored brick building just 2 blocks from Poppy's new preschool. Luca stood at the ribbon with a pair of absurdly large scissors, his daughter holding one side while Dahlia held the other. The crowd applauded as the ribbon fell. That night, back in the townhouse, Poppy curled in her bed with the moon dragon tucked under her arm. Luca and Dahlia stood in the doorway, watching her breathe. "I used to think I'd already missed the best parts of my life," he whispered. She laced her fingers through his. Turns out they were just waiting. He kissed her temple. "I love you." "I know," she whispered against his chest. "I love you too." And for the first time in a long time, neither of them had to wonder what came next. They were already living it, together. The spring fundraiser was only 2 weeks away, and the entire foundation office was humming with energy. The main hall, once a forgotten warehouse, had been transformed into a space filled with light and purpose paintings from local artists lined the walls, and a soft playroom buzzed with laughter from children whose parents attended free financial literacy classes in the next room. Luca stood in the newly finished multipurpose room, holding a clipboard and reviewing the final list of speakers. His shirt sleeves were rolled up to the elbows, and there was paint on the side of his wrist from helping re-stain the benches in the courtyard garden. He didn't notice Dahlia walk in until she leaned against the doorway, watching him with an expression that made his heart stutter. "You're really doing it," she said, her voice carrying quiet awe. He looked up. "Doing what?" "Building something that lasts." He set the clipboard down. "You gave me the tools." "No," she said, crossing the floor to him. "You had them already. You just finally had the space to use them." He reached for her hand. "There's something I need to ask you." Her brows lifted, curious. "It isn't a big gesture," he said. "No rooftop candles or champagne fountains. I didn't plan it." "Even better," she said softly. He took a breath. "Will you marry me?" Her eyes didn't widen. She didn't gasp. She simply smiled like she'd known this was coming, like she'd been waiting for him to say what had already been written between them. "Yes," she said, "of course." He kissed her like the question and the answer had always belonged together. She leaned into him, her fingers curling into his shoulder, grounding them both. Later that night, after Poppy had fallen asleep with glitter still clinging to her cheeks from the day's art session, Luca and Dahlia sat on the back steps of the townhouse, barefoot on the warm wood. She rested her head on his shoulder as they watched the garden lights flicker on. "I talked to the architect today," she said, "about expanding the center." He turned slightly. "Already?" "There's more demand than we expected. I want to add a second wing offer after school programs and counseling, maybe even a scholarship fund." He nodded slowly. "I like that." She nudged his leg with hers. "You'll help me design it." "With one condition." "Name it." "I get to name the new wing." She raised an eyebrow. "What would you call it?" "The Poppy Rooms." Her laugh was soft but full. "That's perfect." The following week, they told Poppy about the engagement. Dahlia knelt beside her in the sunny living room, holding out a small, hand-painted box. Inside was a delicate bracelet with 3 tiny charms: a heart, a star, and a dragon. "We wanted you to have something special too," Dahlia said. Poppy's eyes lit up as she examined the charms. "Is the dragon for my book?" Luca nodded. "And the heart is for all of us." Poppy threw her arms around both of them, her grin stretching from ear to ear. "Does this mean I get to wear a sparkly dress?" Dahlia kissed her forehead. "You can have the sparkliest one we can find." The wedding was held in the garden behind the foundation center, a quiet, intimate ceremony surrounded by wildflowers, laughter, and the families they'd grown to love. Poppy walked ahead of Dahlia, tossing flower petals from a silver basket, her curls pinned back with tiny pearl pins. Dahlia wore a gown the color of pale champagne, simple and elegant, the fabric catching the light with every breath of wind. Luca stood at the altar in a dark slate suit, his daughter's bracelet charms tucked into his breast pocket. When she reached him, Dahlia didn't look at the guests. She looked only at him. "You ready?" she whispered. "I've been ready since the day you handed me your phone," he said. Their vows were short, spoken without trembling, steady and sure. When they kissed, the applause rose like waves, but the world fell away. They celebrated with music and dancing in the courtyard, lanterns strung overhead. Poppy insisted on leading the first dance and spun between them until she collapsed in giggles. As the night deepened, friends drifted home, and the three of them sat quietly on a bench beneath a flowering dogwood tree. Luca pulled Dahlia close, his arm draped around her shoulders, while Poppy leaned against his other side, half asleep. "Do you still feel like you don't belong?" Dahlia asked, her voice low. He looked around the lights, the laughter, the life they'd built. "No," he said, "not anymore. This is ours." The seasons passed. The foundation expanded, just as they'd hoped. The poppy room opened with a ribbon cutting and a child-sized mural of a moon dragon soaring across the wall. Dahlia continued to lead with vision and grace, her days divided between board meetings and bedtime stories. Luca found rhythm in the balance of hands on work and guiding others to find their footing. Poppy grew, her world full of love and certainty. She had two parents, now one who had never left, and one who had chosen to stay forever. One summer evening, they sat on the townhouse steps again, barefoot and content. Dahlia rested her head against Luca's chest. "You ever miss the way things were?" she asked. He kissed the top of her head. "No, because every day since you came into our lives has been better than the last." She smiled, even the days with glitter and the couch cushions. "Especially those." And as the last light faded from the sky, their hands found each other's, fingers laced tightly, the way they always would be together, in a life they built not out of perfection, but out of love that never let go.